I have, and that too. And I have the great pleasure of welcoming Master Gardener Susie Lyons, who has a wealth of knowledge about our topic of the day, gingers, and everything about the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything you thought you knew and didn't. And she is going to share her expertise with us. We are graciously going to ask her questions in the Q&A section if they come up. And those of us behind the scenes will try to keep up with you along the way until she's able to answer them at the end of the presentation. If you would please keep in mind, we love hearing your comments in chat, but questions should be referred to Q&A. And of course, Susie will be able to answer them when she is ready to do so. And at the end of the presentation, we will also be asking you to fill out a survey so that we can figure out how to serve you even better along the way. So with all that said and done, I hope you enjoyed Susie's presentation on gingers. Susie, welcome.
Thank you, Christy. Hello, everybody. It's kind of exciting to do this talk because I have so many gingers in my yard. Gingers I didn't plant that have been there since maybe the 1950s when the house was built. So it's very exciting to share this with you. I wouldn't exactly say I'm an expert on them, but I have watched them for the last 15 years. And so I have some information and some photos and also some live show and tell items to make it a little bit more fun. So this is as much about gingers as I can share in the hour or so that we have. And the reason I included "Want a Trade" in the title is because every single time I'm with anybody or anybody comes to visit me, they always say, "You've got that ginger? Oh, you want to trade?" And so they may have another one that I don't have or I didn't have. And so now we'll learn about gingers. So these are pretty much the gingers that I'm going to share with all of you from the culinary ginger and then all the ornamental gingers, some of which do have some edible properties and or medicinal properties, but I won't get into that so much. We're just going to talk about the gingers and how to grow them, where they grow best, etc. And I'll probably follow that order. I think my slideshow is in that order. So the first one is, the culinary ginger, which most of us know. It's a perennial plant, which makes it really great. And there's rhizomes, which are what you use for flavoring foods. Caribbean islands, China, used medicinally and for cooking. It's marketed in the United States as the ginger itself, the ginger rhizome, powdered and candied. And it comes up every spring, no matter what. It's wonderful. It's such a treat. The sad part is when it dies, because then it's gone. But they grow very well in Florida. So typically they're short stalks. They're 2 to 3 feet high. So that's very different than some of the ornamentals that grow much higher. They're narrow. They have narrow leaf blades. And they have yellow-green flowers with purple tips, and they grow in dense spikes. And when you buy them in the store, you want them plump and strong and actually shiny. You don't want them like this. This is a really dried up ginger. It's still good. And you can still see the yellow part of it inside, and it smells fantastic. So it's still good, but this isn't the best that it can be. There's more flavor when it's plump and shiny and not all dried out like this. But this is what you can put in the ground and grow. So that or this, it's really dried up. But then this is a turmeric, actually. And so either of these can be planted once they get dried like this. They work really well in the ground. The gingers are often confused with with ornamentals, the alpinia, because they're very similar to these true gingers. And we'll go through, you'll see the differences in them. So that's a true ginger. That's what ginger looks like when it's growing. And you can easily, divide it and dry the rhizome a little and then plant it again in some soil with a little soil on top of it. And I've got ladybugs in my gingers. And you can keep them in pots or you can grow them in the ground. This is a shell ginger, but that's a little out of order. So how to grow ginger. So you always want to plant it in the spring to early summer if you can. You want to wash them when you're ready to plant. And you just put it on top of soil and then lightly cover it with more soil and water it somewhat, until the rains begin. So in May, when it's really dry here in North Florida, you'll want to water it some, but not too much. They like moist soil, but they can tolerate dry. And truthfully, I don't water much of anything of mine, and they all do absolutely fine, but they're all established. So once they're established, you don't have to worry too much about them. And July and August, you should be able to dig up freshly grown ginger. And then you'll see, I'll show you what the leaves look like. Many of the leaves, I grabbed a bunch of them from my backyard. They just are all dried up leaves. And you can actually, some people don't like them in their yard, so they pull them out or clip them out or just clear them out, but they're really great for pathways and walkways for mulch. They really do really well in the mulch. So feel free to use the leaves for that. So the leaves die back, and that's just a normal part of their growth cycle. I'll show you what they look like when they've been frozen. Very different.
Susie, sorry, I wanted to ask you, how do you prefer to answer questions? Would you like to answer questions while you're presenting, or you want to wait until the end?
We can do it. We can do it in between slides. Yeah.
Okay. So we did have a question from Mary Hawks about do you plant ginger in full sun or broken shade?
It usually grows best in partial shade to shade. There are a few that tolerate more sunlight, but they really prefer shade to partial shade. And, if you have a huge oak tree and then you have lots of things growing all around underneath the oak tree, that's a perfect place. That's where a lot of mine are. They're under trees and under azaleas or under other things, and they grow very well. So, yep. So to harvest, late summer or early fall, when the tops have died down, when you see all those dead leaves, you can dig up some of those rhizomes and let them dry in the shade. In Jamaica and many of the islands, they peel, wash, and sun dry the ginger. It's a major spice. And there's, they peel and boil them and soak them in syrup for candied ginger and roll them in sugar. But mostly the way we use it is we let them dry in the shade, and then we'll either plant it or we'll peel it, wash it, and use it in cooking. So there's a really nice, plump, shiny ginger. And that's what you want. Again, not this, not dried up at all. You want it plump and shiny. And they're really great. It does not take very long to peel them when they're fresh like this. And you actually can just peel it with a spoon. You don't have to use a knife and waste any of the ginger. You can just peel a little bit off with a spoon, and it comes off really well, really easily. And again, you can harvest the ginger anytime during the growing season, but you probably wouldn't want to start till July or so, but you can harvest it July, August, September. And what you want to do is choose two shoots which are heading out from the other ones. So you may have a couple here, but two off this way. You'll want to use a serrated knife and slice down into the soil between the larger group and the two that are off shoots. And you can then separate them from the rest of the shoots, but be very careful when you pull, because that you can pull the whole plant up with it. So you want to be really careful when you pull it up. So you can see some of these have been around a while. They're pretty well established. And so if you want to pull them apart, you would have to be very careful to maneuver it away from the other roots. And
Okay.
you can, another question?
Yeah, we have a few questions, mostly
Okay.
there was some harvesting questions. So there was a question from Jerry Clem. In our community garden here in Manatee County, it is ready. Ginger is ready for harvest now in February. Why?
Well, we did have a really long summer, and Manatee County, you're further south. I don't know how cold you got that first little freeze that we had up here in Gainesville, or how cold you got these last 3 days, but it's been a long summer, so they've been growing like crazy.
Yeah, I
So
would
you
say
can,
that.
yeah, you can, I'm sure further south, you'll be able to pull them out almost any time. I think you just want to, I think they're best when they're fresh and they're not older gingers, you know. So in the fall is a really good time to pull them up. And actually, you know, down there it probably feels like fall. It's probably like fall down there now. And when you do, you know, take them, pull them apart, there's little pink leaves at the base, and those can be tough. So you can clean those away and then just scrub away any that are remaining with your fingertips. And again, let it dry at room temperature, and use the side of a spoon to remove the skin and rinse it again. And then you can slice it or grate it and store it in a cool, dark, dry place. Sometimes I'll store my leftover, you know, that when it's plump and shiny, I will wrap it with a semi-damp towel and put it in the refrigerator in a Ziploc bag. But it's best to use it up while it's fresh. And you've got tons, so you might as well. You usually have tons.
So we have another question.
Yeah.
Do you recommend taking a shiny piece from the grocery store and planting in spring?
You can. And you can just break it up into 1 inch, just 1 inch pieces and let it dry. So you can let it dry like this. I've actually had, this is turmeric, which is relatively fresh turmeric, which is another type of ginger. And then what I do is I break them off and then I dry them into smaller 1 inch pieces. And this is literally sat in a basket on my kitchen island. And about 6 months or 8 months later, there's roots coming up off of each of these nubs. And what I did then is I planted it, and this is what came of it. Now these were covered, but they still, you know, got a little bit of cold. So I just stuck the root, the rhizome that was sitting in my basket for 6 months that finally showed itself and grew some shoots, and just put it in here and put a little soil over it. And now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rhizomes that I can dig up some of them and leave the others, and it'll just keep spreading and growing. So, you know, even if you store it sitting out in a basket in your kitchen island, it'll grow there. They're hardy and they grow almost anywhere in any conditions. So they're really great plants to have. So now that's all about culinary ginger, cooking, and, you know, or not cooking, but preparing it and get it ready to use, or drying it or harvesting it. Now we're just going to switch over to the ornamentals, because they're actually the ones that everybody wants to trade. because they're so beautiful and they're so amazing. The only sad thing is when they die back in the winter. Fortunately, we haven't had too many cold winters for 3 or 4 years. And so all of my gingers were, 8 feet tall, 6, 7, 8 feet tall. So many of the ornamentals were beautiful. And then of course, this last freeze really did them in. So they may all they all may have died back. We'll see. We'll see when I go to look for it. So the peacock ginger is native in Asia. And I'm pretty sure you guys know that one because it's really quite popular. It has little flowers, usually pale purple and purple, light pink. The leaves are oval shaped and they grow not 4 to 110 inches, but 4 to 10 inches long. Leaves patterned with shades of green or purple or even silver. It's a great ground cover, but it just doesn't last long because it dies back in the late fall and it's gone. It disappears. And there it is, the wonderful peacock ginger. It's so beautiful. It's really beautiful. And when you have them for a long period of time, the leaves, grow bigger and they continue to divide and add on to the collection. So I'm often will have people come over and I'll dig one up in the midst of a group of them that are growing because there's always so many to share. Gingers are sharing plants. They're plants to share with people every year because you always have more. Some years I'll skip just because I've been sharing too much and let them kind of build back up again. But they're a wonderful plant. So the peacock gingers, Camphoria genus, and the leaves can all look somewhat different. Then shampoo ginger is really popular with a lot of people who use the creamy liquid substance that comes out of the cones, the red cones of the shampoo ginger. So that is Gingerbeer zerumbet, a wild ginger, pineco ginger. So it's known by several different names. It's native to areas of Malaysia and Indonesia, and it's got the pine cone shaped flowers that can range from yellow to pink in color. And they're the ones that have that creamy liquid in the cones, and you can use it as shampoo or conditioner. The rhizomes are bitter, so this one is not suitable for cooking. And this is just beautiful. So you can squeeze these red cones and this substance comes out of it, and it can be used soapy. And then you can see the green leaf is very characteristic of a lot of gingers. They have this really nice long leaf and thick stem, and many gingers you can tell because of what their leaves look like. Any questions about the peacock or the shell ginger?
Wait, hold on. Sorry.
Okay.
Let's see here. Okay.
One just came in. Do you fertilize your gingers? And if so, with what and when?
Well, I am blessed because I've lived in this neighborhood since 1960, and I bought this house 17 years ago from the first owners built it in 1950, and John Wilson and Mary Wilson loved their 3 acres, and they augmented it like crazy. They augmented the soil. John helped start the Kanapa Gardens with some of the bamboo off of the property. And then he also brought, I think, some of all of his gingers to Kanapa Hall. And he helped start a men's garden club. This was all back in the 50s and 60s. So truthfully, I found about 5 or 6 different bags of fertilizer in the potting shed that was on the property when I bought it 17 years ago, but I've never used any fertilizer ever. And so I'm not sure whether that is because the soil was augmented for 50 years and it's great, in great shape. The story is told that whenever anybody came to get a plant from John Wilson, his wife would shake off all the soil from the plant before she gave it to the person. So I think that they really took care of their soil and loved their soil and didn't want to give any of it away. So everything grows in my yard without any fertilizer and no pesticides, except one maybe for one bug that comes out in the spring. So yeah, no fertilizers. I don't use any fertilizers. I would imagine augmenting the soil is really, really a good thing. And truthfully, there are many times when I don't put all of my compost in my compost pile, but I'll just put the compost under one of my big plants and then just turn it under the plant. So I'm constantly adding to the soil. I just don't do any fertilizer.
Good deal. Before you go on, Susie, a couple of folks are asking, how tall do the pine cone gingers generally grow? And someone else elaborated, they're asking for size and height for any of the plants that you're going through, so they have a sense of how much space they'll take up.
Okay, sorry, I didn't add that to all of these slides. The peacock gingers are low to the ground, so they're considered like a ground cover, and they're probably about 4 to 6 inches above the ground. The shampoo gingers probably about 3 to 4 feet high, and that would be the leaves. The pine cones themselves, the stems with the pine cones, are probably about 2 feet high, and all of them do, add to their width, but not quickly and not so fast that you wouldn't be able to, move a few here and there. So the shampoo ginger's about for 3 to 4 feet with the green leaves height, and then the pine cone is underneath it. I'll give you heights on every other one that we talk about. The shell ginger is beautiful. It's another ornamental. It's native to, Eastern Asia, South Japan to Taiwan. It's found in South China, Malaysia. It thrives in wet environments, though I will tell you that I have some shell ginger that are not down by the lake, and they're not even, 50 feet close to the lake. They're more like 80 feet away from the lake. So not necessarily really wet. They do quite well in moderately moist environment. And they can grow really tall, 8 feet tall. And I cut some to show you, and you can get an idea what the size of the leaves are. The leaves are really quite long, probably about 2 feet or so. And the stems, of course, are pretty sturdy, as many ginger stems are. And this is just the top third, this one, of one of the shell gingers that I have. And again, it's quite old and it's well established. And the shell gingers that I have are about 6 feet wide, 5, 6 feet wide, and then about 6 to 8 feet tall. And they're beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful. And I have a picture of the flower from it next. They're just stunning, actually, if you want to know the truth. I'm always amazed. And the hummingbirds really love these plants. And what happens is you can see the flower, the whole set of flowers on the left, they're closed, and then they slowly but surely open up. And then the hummingbirds come by every day and get into the ones that are open. The one on the right is, the one on the right shows you what it looks like open. It's pretty amazing. Every time it comes every year, I'm always amazed. And this is 17 years on, and I'm still bedazzled by it. It's just truly amazing. So you can see the leaves are big and long, or they're broad and long, sturdy, very sturdy. It's very difficult to dig these up because they're very tied in with each other. You know, if we were in person, I would have been able to bring in some and share them with everybody. So we'll get a day where we can get everybody over to my house so everybody can dig. Because the few times I've had a dig, people leave with a truckload of plants or a trunk load of plants. And usually the next year they tell me, oh, the gingers are all coming out, Susie, it's fantastic. So we'll have a dig, and everybody can take home a ginger so they can have their own set of gingers in their yard. Yeah, this one is pretty striking. This one's pretty amazing. The shell ginger is amazing. Okay. And then the white ginger, the butterfly flower, or the ginger lily is really quite pretty. And they actually do like a little bit of wet, and they're down closer to the lake. They come in white, pink, orange, and red tones. Their flower stalks come above the foliage. So where the shampoo ginger, the cone was beneath the leaves, the foliage, the flowers actually come out of the foliage, and then you can see them on top. Their blooms are just so fragrant. They're just beautiful. And you can cut these and bring them indoors to enjoy. They stay in pretty good shape for a while. You can remove the old flower stalks to encourage new growth. They're known as Hedychium coronarium, you know, like a coronary, the crown. They're common in various regions of Hawaii, and they can grow 4 to 8 feet tall, 2 to feet wide. And I don't think mine are 8 feet, but they're 6, 7 feet tall when they're at their height. And once established, you don't have to do much. I've truly, I've never watered in any of my plants. They all get enough, and they all make it through the drought, unless it's over 3 weeks of 90-degree weather and we haven't had rain, like in May when it can be real dry. I don't water these, but I water some other things. But once they're established, you don't need to do much with these gingers. That's the beauty of them. They come up every year. You get to enjoy them. They die back. You don't have to worry about them, and then they come back. And they need very little care. I mean, you have to admit, this is pretty amazing. These are gorgeous. These are really gorgeous. I see another question. Is there another question?
Let's see. Yeah, Christy's been really good about answering them, but
yeah, sorry, I was in the middle of typing a new one.
I know. We can ask this one. Which ones are sun and shade? I think most of them are shade, right? Except
there's one or two
that could be sun, right?
Almost all of them are partial shade to full shade. Almost all of them. There's a few that will take a little more sun, and when we get to that one, you'll see that it says this one can handle sun. So almost all of these are in partial shade to shade, and they do well in that range. They do very well in that range. And some tolerate even a little more sun than you would think they would, if it's not all day, if it's morning sun and not late afternoon sun.
Exactly. Have to remember, these are understory plants. So they evolved in tropical rainforests or subtropical forests in the understory. So they're just haven't evolved in full sun.
Right.
But like you said, many of them can adapt to more full sun conditions. We have another question from Rita. When you cut the butterfly ginger flower off to encourage more flowering, do you cut just above the leaves?
Yeah, or just the stem of the butterfly. Excuse me, we're in butterfly.
Okay.
You can actually, wherever you see them that are dead, like that on the right side, you can just cut it at the base of that, a little bit further down, and then or you can just cut where the flowers are, and then they'll come out with more flowers. Either way, they're just prolific. Either way you look at it, they're prolific. Any way you look at it, but I don't ever touch them. I never cut them to bring them indoors. I never take the flowers off, and they're always blooming, and they do fine without me doing a thing to it. So again, these take very little care. They need very little assistance in their growing. So that, they say that you can cut the flowers to encourage growth, but I never do it. And they grow really well all the time, and they're always replenishing. So once they're established, I think that's the key. And established could be just a year or two. I mean, they get established pretty well, pretty quickly.
Yeah, there's another kind of follow-up question to that. Do these ornamentals normally produce annually or constantly throughout the year? Depends on where you are, but yeah.
Well, winter, of course, they all die back. So you'll have growth after you've planted them in the spring. They'll come out later on in the summertime, June, July, August, and they'll keep flowering pretty much into the fall. And then some of their leaves start to die back. If we don't have a freeze, they'll stay green, and they'll just bloom till the end of the fall. And then they usually don't bloom again until the spring again, late spring, early summer.
Yeah, they usually slow down. We have one more with the butterfly ginger, and then I'll let you get back. We were told that the butterfly ginger were edible. Are they?
I will say that I can't say.
Good answer.
Because IFAS doesn't usually talk about, the edible nature and what to do with them with cooking. You can Google, edible gingers, and you might not find it on the IFAS website, and you might not find it at UF, the right here in Gainesville, but there are some other areas of Florida that I actually had some other slides, but we pulled them, that talk about, the edible ones, which ones are edible and what you can do with them and how you can use them in food and prepare them. And if you just Google that, you'll find plenty of articles about edible gingers. I personally have only used the culinary ginger and the turmeric. A couple have a little stronger, more bitter taste. And if you put them in maybe bland foods, you can do that. But that's just one or two of them that you can do that with. And on some of the ones in the future, we'll see if I may mention, which ones are edible. But I wouldn't eat any. I wouldn't tell you to eat any of them other than the culinary ginger and the turmeric. Those two are, are well known and used in eating and preparing foods and flavoring meals. But you can Google it and find other things if you want to. Sorry, I just can't. It's not an IFAS thing.
No, and that's okay. I mean, I'd like to, because there was another question about using the flowers. And the same thing is that this presentation is focused on the planting and the care of gingers, and mostly just because our expertise is not in the eating of it.
Right.
So these are great questions, but I don't want to give an answer where we could be mistaken. So,
right. But I will tell you that what I've read is that some of the flowers are medicinal and the rhizomes are medicinal. So, in different cultures, they do use the flowers and they do use the rhizomes for various things. And you can find that easily if you Google it.
Great. Thank you, Susie.
All right. So here, yellow ginger, it has reported medicinal uses. It's strong, bitter taste and musky odor. So you wouldn't want to use this necessarily for cooking, but for medicinal uses, maybe so. And you could Google that and find that out on your own. The roots and the rhizomes are actually short and thick. They're shorter and thicker than, here's the turmeric where it's kind of long and it's somewhat thick, but the roots and rhizomes are shorter and thicker than these are on the yellow ginger. And this one's a perennial flowering plant. So, and this one, I don't have yellow ginger. I think that's one of the few gingers I don't have in my yard. It's short stemmed with tufted leaves. And so I'm not familiar with this one. I've not watched it for 17 years and been aware of it and shared it or anything, but this one's perennial flowering plant. And this is actually a butterfly plant. It's not a yellow ginger, it's a butterfly plant. So I didn't have a picture of the yellow ginger. I wanted to get a picture of the ginger itself so you could see that it's more yellow. Spring ginger is a younger version of mature ginger. So the rhizome would be tougher and more fibrous, and it's plump and juicy with pink, a pink blush, and it can be used in cooking. So a young ginger, very young, like June or after you've planted it in the spring, and the early ginger would be a spring ginger because you're picking it in the spring, but also it's just a younger version of mature ginger. So it might be interesting to try them and see the difference in the way that that they taste in dishes, in different dishes. And that's what the spring ginger looks like. See, it's very, very white, and they're relatively smaller, and they're very pinkish. You've got that pink. Isn't that pretty? That is pretty. Okay, so turmeric, it can be classified differently from gingers, but the roots and rhizomes appear identical to common ginger. They have a warm, bitter taste with a peppery aroma and orange, yellow, golden yellow. I'll show you what they look like. Here you go. You can see it. Isn't that pretty? It's a gold, orange gold. These are used medicinally, but you can see how this one is quite plump and doesn't look all dried up. Whereas these that I broke into smaller pieces are a little bit more dried, and they're smaller. And this is what you would plant. You would just lay that on the soil, and it would grow from each of these little nubs. It would grow, and you'd have turmeric like this plant. And this is, this looks a little bit like garlic, but turmeric looks a little different, just a little bit different. So turmeric can be used medicinally. I'm sure all of you have read everything that there is out there on turmeric. Everybody's adding turmeric to everything the last 10 years because it's supposed to be really good for you. So you can look it up and get the information. It's used a lot in Indian cooking. When I was over in India, the cook was always adding turmeric to whatever we ate. And a lot of Indian recipes call for turmeric. So you can always, dry those and grate them and dry it. And have your own fresh turmeric. I sometimes just grate the non-dried turmeric right into my dish, whatever I'm cooking.
When would you harvest that, Susie?
Pardon me? When
would you harvest the turmeric?
The turmeric is usually later in the fall. Did I not write that down? No, I did not. You usually get the turmeric a little bit later than the ginger, because the ginger really is good. The spring ginger, early, younger than the mature ginger, and then ginger in July and August it's really nice when it's not older. Turmeric, it's better when it's older, and maybe that's why it has a bitter taste and it's peppery. Because it is an older, you would harvest these in the fall. But again, you can just have them sitting around dried and plant them the next spring, and they may already start shooting up their little shoots while you're waiting to plant them. Oh, is there a question?
Nope, we're good at the moment.
Okay, there it is. That one's really orange. I mean, that's really orange. What did I have? The one I had is not quite that orange. That's probably more mature than the one I just showed you. The one I showed you was probably harvested earlier. Yeah, boy, that's really pretty. That would make a nice puzzle. Okay, so blue ginger. Now, I will tell you, I didn't know about all these gingers when I first bought this property. And I was at somebody's house, probably 8 years after I was in my house. And I went, well, what's this ginger? He says, oh, that's a blue ginger. I go, oh, I don't have that. He goes, oh, I'll trade you for something else. So, so now I have blue ginger, and they don't quite grow as fast and as readily as some of the other gingers. And I've been, really kind of taking care of my gingers because I don't have many. So I don't give these out yet because I don't have enough to give out. Very beautiful. You'll see a picture in a minute. They're beautiful blue gingers, and they bloom late summer and fall. They have 10-inch tall spikes, purplish, they're rich purplish blue flowers. They're absolutely beautiful. And the blooms look great in the garden because, you get this splash of blue. It's really great. And you can cut them and use them in floral arrangements as well. It's not truly a ginger. It's blue ginger is Dichorasandra versiflora. It's actually in the same family as spiderwort and wandering Jew. It's a clump forming perennial, and it can grow 5 to 8 feet tall and 3 feet wide. But again, it hasn't been growing real fast for me. I've been watching it, being careful. I put a bucket over the couple that have just rooted themselves. And it thrives in shade. It really grows well in shade. And it grows into a large clump that's perfect for mass planting. It does best in the moist, well-drained soil. And it's pest-free, essentially, with only some mealy bugs maybe causing occasional problems. I haven't seen any bugs. I haven't had any problems with bugs, but this one I'm gonna really try to, I'm gonna put it, I usually put all the things that I have them in 3 different places so that I can see where they grow best, and then I move the other 2 over to where they grow best. That's how I do almost all my, when I plant, just to find the best place, the right plant, the right place, the whole Florida friendly landscape concept. It's in South Florida, it's typically an evergreen. Mine are all very, very small, so I've been able to cover them. But up north, I'm imagining once they get pretty big and they're hard to cover, that they will die back. Like this last 3 days would have killed any that I couldn't have covered, or at least, wiped out their leaves and their blooms, their stems and everything. It was awarded Plant of the Year in 2008 by the Florida Nursery Growers and Landscape Association. It's a perfect plant to fill any shady spot in your landscape. So again, this is 5 to 8 feet tall and 3 feet wide, but very slow growing, I would imagine, because I don't fertilize. So this plant may actually benefit from fertilization because it's a slow grower, and here it is. And that you don't get to see. It can be, 8 inches tall and cone-like blooms, just absolutely beautiful. See how strong those stems are? And the leaves typically have a variegated look to them. So they're pretty easy to spot because they have a white center and maybe another stripe or 2 in their leaves. So they're easy to spot and determine that you have blue gingers. Any questions? I see one red. How are we
Yes,
doing
someone is, I'm sorry, I was in the middle of answering, but I'll let you do it. Are any gingers saltwater tolerant?
Are any gingers what tolerant?
Salt water tolerant?
Actually, surprisingly enough, I was reading, because I'm always looking for friends of mine who live near salt water. And I read that many of them are. I don't know specifically, I couldn't list which ones are salt tolerant, but I'd say that many of them are. And I'm actually going to take one of several over to both coasts, on the West Coast up near Port St. Joe, and on the East Coast near St. Augustine, and do some experimentation because they do get significant salt exposure. But many of them do well in salt. So I'm eager now, because when I read that, I went, oh, great, I've got another plant I can try over in my two friends' places. Because I often take plants to each place, because they always struggle to find things that will thrive in their environment. So yes, many of the gingers are salt tolerant.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yes, I would imagine I would just augment the soil so that it's not just sandy soil. I would augment it. And then there's Japanese ginger. And this one, I've never seen. This one I don't have in my yard. It's called Gingiber miyoga, or just plain miyoga. It's native to Japan and Korea, and it can grow to 4 feet tall. And they only use the flower buds and the flavorful shoots in cooking. They don't use the rhizomes, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Isn't that beautiful? That's the Japanese ginger. I didn't have a picture of the actual plant, but I'm sure it's very similar with the thick stem and the leaves. And then this grows probably above the leaves. And there's probably a flower out the top that comes out of the top.
Is this the ginger we often see served with sushi?
I think it is, but
it sure looks like it.
Yeah, I think it is. I'm not certain, because when I was looking it up, it talked about, you know, how they are used in cooking, but they use the flower buds and the shoots. The shoots may be, you know, scraped to make that thin ginger for the ginger and sushi, but I'm not exactly sure whether that is what's used, but I'm guessing yes, just because it's Japanese ginger and sushi is Japanese. So I'm imagining the shoots are what we use. They pickle those gingers. And when I was in Japan a couple of years ago in Osaka, a friend's friend took us outside of the city of Osaka into some mountainside where we went walking, and we went to a farmer's market, or a market of a farmer, and they had tons of fresh pickled ginger. I mean, not just the little jar, but, you know, a whole bowl that you buy that you can add to all your dishes and your cold dishes and your hot dishes. And they were absolutely fantastic because they were fresh. And again, most of the time it's because things are fresh that they taste really, really good. And then there's the other one that a lot of people really love. And I'm thinking maybe I should do this for the plant sale this year, because I have a lot of these and I bet they would sell like crazy. They just won't be blooming quite yet. So we'll have to talk people into buying them and tell them what it's going to look like. They're called a hidden ginger, or hidden pink ginger. And they like humid environments, and they grow in zones 7 to 10, but not all are cold hardy. In fact, this, what I showed you, all those leaves that were dead, those are the hidden ginger leaves that just, and they don't die because of a freeze. They die because they're at the end of their life, at the end of the fall. And then you have all these dead leaves all over your garden. And I ended up pulling them all. And now I've started using them again as walkways, because they're really good for mulch. They like partial, these can handle partial sun. So the ginger curcumin can handle the part sun. And some of mine they get a good bit of sun, but not a full day, maybe 4 hours, three hours. Well-drained soil. Again, they lose their leaves in the cold, except they lose them before, even when it's not very cold at all, not even a freeze. And then they come back in spring, and they always surprise you, because they grow about 18 inches to over 4 feet, but the flowers are only about a foot to a foot and a half tall. So they're hidden, they're underneath the big, huge leaves that grow. And you'll see a picture when we go next to it. And this curcuma longa, that's the type that's the turmeric, which has the medicinal purposes. but the hidden pink ginger is the ginger curcumin and petiolata. They're the hardy species. And this is what they look like. And they're magical because they're literally, you can see them underneath. The leaves will come up and all of a sudden you'll see around the leaf and you'll see this right in the midst of those beautiful leaves. And you can see the leaves, the red in the leaf and the center of the leaf, that differentiates them from some of the other gingers that don't have that red in the center of the leaf. And these are just fantastic. I have so many of these, it's not funny. So I'm pretty sure I should dig these up and put them in pots for the plant sale, because these are very popular. And because they handle a little sun, some people who have a little sun, they can plant these. And these are beautiful. Let's see, I think I have another picture. Yeah. See how they're kind of, the flowers are hidden inside the leaves. They're quite beautiful. And some are pink, some are the darker, like magenta look. They're pretty. And then this gives you more of the red stem that moves up into the leaf.
Susie, it looks
Yeah.
like these would be a great cut flower. Do they do well as those?
Yes, you can cut these and they're sturdy, and the leaves will stay in pretty good shape for a while, and they do too. They're very sturdy, very sturdy. You just keep them in water. But even better, I would just dig up one of them or two of them and put them in a pot and use that in the house if you want something really pretty, because then you can put it back out in the yard and put it in the ground again.
Right.
You know,
That's a good idea too.
yeah. And you still get the beauty, the beautiful flowers and everything. I have some of each.
I've had these for a long while, but I don't know if I have a unique strain or something, but they do tend to spread, and I continually have to pull them up and can't pull them back because they're going through. I inherited a pampas grass, and now they're growing in that. So you have to be a little bit aggressive with them unless you have some different ones.
Yeah, no, I think this one, how I said the blue ginger isn't very aggressive and it doesn't really grow really fast. These do. And that's why they're actually so easy to share, because you always have so many. But again, that's the warning sign of something that's, whoa, watch out. So you may want to put this in a corner area away from, some of the other plants. I don't think I'd planted, mine's already where it is. So I have to go with the flow as far as where it is now. But if I were to plant it, I would plant it not in the midst of other things. I would plant it on its own little space, and maybe even be tempted to bury some kind of a barrier around them if I didn't want them to spread so quickly. Because
I tried a large plastic pot with the bottom cut off, and that tended to slow them down a bit.
Did it a plastic with the bottom cut off?
Yeah, and buried
Okay.
with the top just above the ground level.
Well,
covered in mulch.
If we sell this at the plant sale, that might be what we would recommend, is that they just cut the bottom of the pot off and put that in the ground to try
I'll be
to
bringing some this year.
Yeah. You will be bringing some.
I plan to.
What color?
I have to get them out of where they shouldn't be.
I know what you're talking about. What color are your flowers?
They're a little bit more pink than the ones in this image.
Yeah. I have some pinks too, but I have a few of these, but I have more pinks. And they're really gorgeous. But I agree with you, Colin. They're more aggressive than any of the other ones that I have. The shell ginger tends to be more clumping, and then the ginger tends to grow not as quickly, and then the blue ginger, and then these tend to spread pretty quickly. Some of the others, not quite as aggressive as this one and not as slow as the other one, and they're more clumping, like the spiral. I think that's next. Yeah. The spiral.
Susie, I'm sorry, before you go on, we have a couple of questions that have popped up. What's the difference between this particular ginger and the earlier mentioned turmeric?
Actually, I didn't have I only have the live picture of the turmeric. I didn't have I decided to not go totally into the turmeric because, you know, I wanted to stay with the true gingers and the ornamental gingers. So I can't tell you exactly what the difference is, except that one is petiolata, which is the one that's the pink, and then there's the longa. The curcuma longa is the turmeric, and the ginger curcumin is petiolata, is the one with the pink and the pink flowers. So they're different. They are different, but I can't tell you.
Fair enough.
I wish I
We
could
can
answer
definitely
it.
look that up, though.
But I'll look it up. I mean, you know, at some point I'll look up the answers to these, or I'll look up some of these questions so I know better next time, and I'll add it
Sure
in
thing.
into the slide. I'll improve the slideshow because that's a really good question. That's a really good question. So the spiral gingers, I think a lot of people may know the spiral gingers, Costus genus, no aromatic oils, no culinary value. Many cultures do prize them for medicinal properties. They do well in part sun. So this one's a part sun, and the curcuma petiolata, those two are part sun, filtered sun or shade. And they can be propagated from rooted cuttings. You just lay, you know, a 3 to 4 8-inch stem pieces flat on the soil during warm months, and then they'll grow from the stem. And I brought actually a picture to show you this. You can see the stem is curly. Can you see how it's curled? I don't know whether you can see it on you can see this, how it's curled. Let me lift the leaves. See how it's curled? It curves around, it spirals around. And this is what they look like when your blanket fell off because of the wind. And this is what they look like, all really sad. And so I think I'll have to cut all of them back. And these grow they grow quite high, 8 feet. They grow quite high. And they're beautiful, and they have a cone at the top, and the cone puts out the flowers. They're really quite pretty. How are we doing on time?
You have just hit your 1 hour mark, but we still have a little more time, in maybe 5 to 10 minutes, if you want to answer any more questions after.
Okay, great. Because I think this is what the spirals look like. Some of the spirals, or the tower ginger and the spirals, they look kind of like this. They put out some beautiful flowers. And you can see how spirally some of the spirals are. My spirals are not quite this spirally, but they're quite beautiful with it. And they have that. I don't have this kind. I don't have this kind. I only have the ones that are less spiral, but quite dramatic, quite beautiful. The red button ginger grows 3 to 4 feet tall. Leaves are mid-green. Late winter to early spring, the plants produce bright red brackets from which individual orange yellow edible flowers emerge. That's what I showed you, this picture. It's striking. I don't have the red button ginger, and I don't have the red tower ginger. They're 6 feet tall in zones 9 to 11. They thrive in full sun to part shade. So the red tower ginger can handle full sun. That's probably the only one that I've read can handle full sun, and they have fuzzy leaves. But this is, and then you can see what that is. That's the red tower ginger. Pretty amazing. And that one I don't have. That's really amazing. This one is the coolest one I have, I think, because it grows really tall, maybe 10 feet. And all of a sudden, it just, it grows probably an inch every couple of days. You can almost watch it grow. And the stem is much more hardy than the other gingers. I'd say as big as my thumb or bigger in diameter. The stems are just amazing. And they have flowers that are ruffled. And they come from each side of the cone at the top of the big stem, and the leaves are 12 inches long with undersides covered with fine short hairs. They tolerate more sun. So the red tower ginger and the crepe ginger tolerate more sun, preferably early, than other species. And this is it. No, it isn't. I'm going the wrong way. Isn't that flower amazing? It's got the ruffled edges of the flower, and they grow. This one grows, you can see that stem is pretty hardy. This goes straight up, and they grow in pairs, and they get to like 10 feet tall, and they have this red cone at the top, and then these fluffy flowers come from either side of it, and they just go all the way up that cone until they're finished, and then they die back, and you don't see anything. And then all of a sudden you see an inch or two, and then it's a foot, and then it's 2 feet and 6 feet and 10 feet. It's really amazing. The crepe ginger is amazing. And I have that one. This is the one I never knew what it was. And I was just always amazed by it. It's just amazing. It's really amazing. This and the shell ginger are the two that really amaze me, and the blue ginger. And then this is the variegated ginger, and I've never seen any flowers off of it. And this is what it looks like when it's had a little winter. See how the leaves aren't quite as vibrant. They've browned up. This is really pretty, but it can freeze back, but it likes shade. It prefers shade, though a couple of mine get a lot of sun, and they still do okay, but they prefer partial shade. And they're absolutely stunning, and they brighten up any dark spot. A couple feet away from a tree that has a big canopy. This is a great understory ginger, really pretty. So there's a couple of resources that I tapped into, and you can Google ginger IFAS and you'll get all the information you need regarding gingers. And that's it.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much, Susie. I really appreciate it. There's always so much good information that I get when you do your talks.
Well, and it's more, this was more really, savoring the beauty of them and just how amazing they are, but and a little bit of information. But I think the takeaway is that gingers do very well in North Central Florida. They take very little upkeep and care. They come back every year on their own just fine. You can enjoy them to the max, and then you can share them in the spring or fall. And they're just a wonderful plant, and they take up, you can fill your yard with them.
Yes, you can. Absolutely. Okay, folks, before you start disappearing, I am going to take a couple more questions if you have them. And Cynthia has kindly posted our survey link in the chat box. If you would take a moment to let us know how we did today and what we can do to make things better for you. We'll get to a couple of these questions while you're doing that. And let's see what we've got here. And Brian asked, when are you having a yard visit?
Well, I'll try to schedule it with Julie. And it might be best if we do it in the spring, because we'll be able to, I know where they are, so we can dig them up at any time. I can always get you some of the rhizomes, but springtime, I think spring before it gets too hot. And, maybe after the freeze, maybe after March. So maybe the end of March. That'd be a good time for me. So we'll talk with Julie and see if she'll schedule it.
Sounds like a winner. Sounds like a winner.
Yes.
Okay. And Diana Arnett is asking, where can we get some of these? If we don't have the luxury of a neighbor readily available to share, for one, I can mention that we're going to be having the Master Gardener sale on May 14th, right?
Yes.
May 14th.
Yes,
and,
but I don't really, I'm not confirmed on that May 14th. So I'm
Okay,
getting
it
a
is
little nervous.
tentatively scheduled for May 14th, but you are going to see plenty of advertising come out when
Yes.
it happens officially. But it will happen one way or the other, and we will likely have a few gingers available then.
Yes.
I
But
can
any of the,
pers-
a lot of the nurseries, you know, the blue
exactly.
nursery, is it Blue Nursery out in Hawthorne? And there's quite a few nurseries that have
Absolutely.
gingers. Yeah.
I mentioned earlier that Grassroots Nursery, I know
Mm.
they have several, including the blue ginger. That's where I got mine, and I have been loving mine for the past 2 years, and the blooms I've been getting off of it. So I can't complain at all. But yeah, a little bit of hunting. There are plenty of nurseries in the local area that are more than happy to help you find that special one that you're looking for. And let's see, I don't see any more questions at the moment.
Maybe you could ask everybody to indicate what county they're from.
If I recall, that will be in our Qualtrics, or it will be in the information from when folks registered. So
Okay, because I know when Wendy did hers the other day, she had everybody indicate, you know, which county they were from, so we could see live, you know, where everybody's from. But pretty much wherever you are in Florida, you can grow them. And South Florida, they usually won't freeze back, so they'll always stay tall and gorgeous, and you'll have beautiful foliage. And then when they bloom, you'll have beautiful blooms all the time. So up here, we just have to deal with the freezes that hit us periodically.
yes, like this weekend. Finally got my spiral gingers a couple days ago.
Oh,
that's all right. They'll be back.
Yes, they will. That's the beauty of them.
The other thing that I know I harped on Sakuma a little while ago, but peacock gingers also tend to spread. I bought some, I had some about 15 years ago and planted in a shady patch. And before I knew it, they were appearing in other shady areas of the garden.
Yes.
And went underneath the lawn. I have no idea how that happened, but I'll be busy digging some of those up for the plant sale too.
Yes, yes, yeah. They can be a really thick ground cover if you let them do their thing. It can be quite a ground cover.
Yeah, they're wonderful and they're beautiful to look at. But
Yeah.
before you know it, they'll take over the shady areas.
Yes.
In the summertime, in spring and summer at least.
Yes, yes, and then they disappear.
Now I can't find one for love nor money.
I know. I went looking trying to find a hint of one, but I didn't find any.
No.
All right, then. Well, folks, I think we've covered everything here. I don't see any more questions coming in. Of course, if you do think of something down the road, Cynthia will be sending out an email that has our survey on it again, just in case, and also a way to check out our YouTube site where this presentation will eventually be posted, so that you can rewatch it whenever you need and ask questions at that point in time. So with that, I believe we are going to close this out and say thank you so much for spending a little time with us today. And I hope everyone has a great afternoon. We'll see you at the next session. Bye-bye.
Bye.